with this Q&A session, the questions that are asked, especially if they're kind of opinion related, gear related, these are just my opinions. This is, I only know so much, and I try to do my best to keep involved and up to date with things. But when I share it, it's just my opinion. And there's one right here. David asked that he's been reading that Apple monitors are not great for true color proofing. Well, it's definitely something that I have a thought on. I'm actually using an Apple iMac, the latest generation 27-inch iMac over here, and I have a Thunderbolt display on my desk over here at work. And they're beautiful. They're really nice monitors, but I agree with you. I am not 100% sure how appropriate they are for people who are doing color proofing. My first problem with these monitors is that they have a glass bezel and a glass cover. So it's if you have light, or if you have the display on a desk that's near a window during the day, I find it to be very hard to focus because you've got all this reflection going on. However, with that being said, it's a beautiful monitor, and before anything, you should be calibrating your displays. So, I use X-Rite calibrators. I have the Color Monkey. We use a Color Monkey here at the office. I've got the new little X-Rite onOne photo. So those are fantastic, and at the very least, that'll help you to it. Now, I know Lightroom 4, which is currently in beta, has a really nice soft proofing function. So if you're looking to do prints, the soft proofing function in Lightroom 4 does a nice job of kind of giving you an idea of what your image will look like when it's printed. Now, there's a question, Janice is asking about the ISO monitors. ISO is top of the line. I love ISO monitors. At home, I use Dells. I have twin Dell 30-inch displays. They're IPS panels. They're high quality. They're matte finish like your typical LCD display, and so I don't get reflection, and I get really nice colors. And they're obviously both custom calibrated. So I like them. ISOs are industry known, so you can't go wrong there. And David, I see your question about insuring camera gear. I'll go into that in a minute. Let's just work on an image first. So this image was sent to me by James, and I loved it. It's just a great image. I almost expect to see like a Marlboro Man kind of walk up over the hill here. So let's go ahead and let's work on this image. I'm just going to send this over. I'm going to work on these images the way that I typically work on them, and I usually send my images to Photoshop first, and then I access the onOne suite from Photoshop. That's just kind of how I do things, so might as well keep things consistent. If this was a regular webinar, I would probably just start straight from Suite. Let me just close these panels because they're taking up screen room. Actually, I'll keep them open here. We'll put the layers panel in here. There we go. All right, so with this image, we can do one of two things here. When I first saw this image right off the bat, I kind of thought, what if we do kind of more of a 16:9 type of crop, like something like widescreen, and I'm just kind of, I'm free grabbing over here. I'm not actually using perspective because we can go here and crop it. And I find this to be a pretty interesting crop. I do. Also because you can see that the horizon kind of goes right through the middle of the screen. It's not quite dead center, but you've got these beautiful horses, and you've got kind of a bunch of dead space. I wouldn't consider it negative space. It's just kind of dead space. It's not really doing much. The other alternative is if you don't want a 16:9, I would kind of get rid of more of that sky and see what that does. So but in between the two, I'm just going to go ahead and go back to that kind of wider screen look, just to start with. So that's kind of, this to me, it looks great because, and the reason why I do this, I'll try to explain why I'm doing this the best that I can. The arrangement of the horses, it almost looks like they're fanning out. This horse is going here, these horses are looking over there, this horse is going this way, and so it kind of looks like it's bowing out, and that's why, and I think we're accentuating that by making the crop more narrow. Now, the next thing we can do is clean things up a bit. So there are two ways that you can do this. The first way that you can do it is I love just using a lasso tool and making little selections. And then if I hit the edit and then fill menu item, I can use content aware fill. Now this is a CS5 feature, but it does a really nice job of kind of sampling surrounding information. And I'm not going to get rid of all the rocks in the surface or in the grass. I'm just going to get rid of the ones that are kind of high contrast. So I'm going to get rid of that one. And you can see it does a beautiful job of just kind of matching up. It's content-aware fill and content-aware healing is beautiful when you have a chaotic pattern like all this grass. Because, it's very hard to see any break in pattern since it's just pure chaos to begin with. So we get it here. I might actually kind of, you see this little, I don't know if it's a weed or a wildflower, but it's breaking through the leg, and I don't like that. So I would try masking to the best of my ability here. I'm going to, oops. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and try sampling from this pure dark part of the leg. And see what I'm doing is I'm just kind of masking out. Since there's no real tone information over there, it looks like it's pretty much pure black, at least on this display. I'm not worried about it. I'm just kind of getting rid of it so that we have the leg not being broken into. I'm not going to spend too much more time here. You've got this weed here. This is also kind of might be easy enough to remedy. I'm just going to get rid of it. So you might be asking, like, all right, is this really all necessary? And it really, the answer will vary from person to person. But I think it's necessary. Sorry, I'm just having custom keyboard shortcut difficulties. And so you can see what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of, and I'm doing this very, very sloppily. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I want to show you what I would do here. So, if I had more time, I'd get rid of this. All of these are easy enough to get rid of if you want. I'm using a soft brush, James. James was asking if I was using a soft brush or a hard brush. And then Donald was asking if I can set the crop to a predetermined size. Absolutely, I could. But in this situation here, I wanted to customize the look of it. And then I could stretch it accordingly. If I go to image size, I can adjust the canvas size or the image size. So this is all kind of close. This is 15 by 5 3/4, so I could have added another couple of inches to make it a true 16 by 9. James is asking, what about the rule of thirds? What about the rule of thirds? Here, if you wanted to, oops, let me go to the history. I'm going to put the history in here. So let's go back to the original state for a second. The rule of thirds would have probably had the horizon and the line of horses a little bit further down on the frame or a little bit further up in the frame. As it is right here, it's not quite through the dead center, but it is close enough. Or you can see that the horses themselves are just right through the center of the frame. So that's kind of why I chose to create my own custom widescreen crop. And also just, again, my personal taste, I am not finding much of anything interesting over here. The sky is nice. So if you wanted to maintain a larger perspective, you could have, I could have cropped from here and then taken the entire sky in. But again, I'm standing with my choice here. Now we're going to go ahead and send it into the suite. So I'm going to go to File, Automate, and go to Perfect Effects. And so now we kind of, right off the bat, I'm thinking of stylizing this image, going a little bit nice with a texture overlay. And there's one that I think would work very well here called Rice Paper Light. So with Rice Paper Light, I love it because it just adds some nice, it accentuates what I think the shot already has in it. We can go ahead and try the different modes here. When you apply a texture, if you're in the Advanced tab of Perfect Effects, you'll see this mode drop down. And so I like to hover over these because it'll change the way the texture is blended. So something like darker, I actually like a lot. What I can do with that is I can drop the strength of that down. And I'm also going to increase the scale because you see the texture has it has a border. And so if I increase the scale, I can stretch the texture out so that the border goes off frame so we don't even have that dark area. And so James, James asked what are those shadows on the left and right. If you look at the raw texture file, it has a kind of almost like a border inherent to it. And so by increasing the scale, pretend the texture is stretchable. It's like rubber. You can actually grab it and pull it apart. And so that's what I did. And James, no, I'm not in Lightroom. I'm in Perfect Effects 3, which is part of the onOne Perfect Photo Suite. So here we can kind of go on. What I'll do is I'm going to use a masking brush with, let me bring up the inspector. What I want to do is drop the opacity of the brush and remove some of the texture. Actually, let me drop the feather and the brush size. I'm going to remove some of that texture from the horses. Just, not totally, but just a little bit so that their original color and tone come through. And it helps them stand off of the scene a little bit more. You see how because we've darkened the overall scene with the texture, I'm able to bring them back. Now there's a good question, who just asked it? Lisa did, about some of the horses being kind of dark. We can do that, we can fix that. What I would do here is, I'm going to go ahead and apply a custom effect. Again, under the Advanced tab, there's an Effects option panel. And if I go to the Tone Enhancer, I'm going to apply tone. Now, granted, we're kind of affecting the entire image globally, but don't worry about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the brightness. I'm also going to drop that local contrast. We don't need that much of it. And then I'm also going to create a custom curve. So with a custom curve, I usually press 3 dots, 1, 2, and 3. So that's my highlight, my midpoint, and my shadow, or my white point, my black point, and my midtone. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up and create sort of an S-curve, a custom S-curve. I'll kind of drop the midtone down a bit. Now I'll bring that up. And I'm going to bring out the shadows a bit. Okay. Now, again, this affected the whole image. But with the power of masking, I can turn this effect into a brush. And I do that by going back to my masking brush in Perfect Effects, and then with the inspector up, so here's our inspector, I'm going to press the invert key. And by doing that, it hides that effect, but turns my painting brush into a paint-in brush. And so what I can do is I can paint it in where I want. And so, for instance, the horses that are darker, and again, I'm at a lower opacity, so I'm not going to paint in the full power of it in one fell swoop. I'm going to paint in multiple strokes. And so you see how we're bringing out some of that detail in the horses. Now, I don't want to bring out all of the detail, partly because some of the area of the horse here looks like it has no information. It looks like the shadows have been clipped. You don't really want to brighten up areas of your scene that either have blown out highlights or clipped shadows, because what you're doing is there's no data there. There's nothing to bring out. So what I'm doing is I'm focusing on the areas of the horse that are brighter. And what this does also is it creates a nice definition. It creates sculpture by playing the highlights off of the shadows. So you see what I'm kind of doing here is we're getting this really cool look here on the horses. So when we're done here, what we can do is hit add to commit that effect, and then I'm going to add a slight glow, something like deep forest, but at a very small amount. Bring it to 0 and just bring it up just a tiny bit. And so here, if we hide the effects bar and we hit Command P or Control P, you can see the original and the after. And it's a beautiful image. There's not much that I would want to do. If you want to bring out the grass a bit, that's an easy thing to do also, because if we hit Add and go to Photo Filters, there's an effect called Green Enhancer right here. And that'll bring out the greens in the entire image, but you see how it really pops the foreground. So again, what I would do is, in this case, is I would take my masking brush, invert the mask, and just paint it in the foreground here so that I kind of control where that effect is being applied. So Dave's asking an interesting question. This is kind of a tough question. What Dave says is, you seem to have a number of effects that you use all the time. Can you give us a quick review of the effects you tend to go to most? Oh, that's actually not that tough. Yeah, I do. Dave, a lot of times the effects I use are based on the scene. I want the image to tell me something. So I knew that. So I'm red-green colorblind. I can't see green, but you grow up and you learn things. You know that grass is green. It's one of those phrases. So what I do is I know that a green enhancer will enhance this stuff, and which is why I use it. Some of the effects that I go to most, actually, this rice paper texture, is I use it very often. I use it primarily when a scene has more of a nutty brown warmth to it, because I think it accentuates it. If I want to accentuate a cool scene, something that has cooler colors, if I go to the textures here, a lot of times dark concrete will be really good. And then over to the right, if I'm just going for an overall grungy look, the scratch film light is a wonderful one. So those are my textures. Movie looks is my most used category. I love movie looks, and a lot of these effects are throwbacks from Photo Tools. So Blue Dawn Leonidas, or we now call it Blue Dawn, is one of my favorite ones. Fashion Passion I never liked in Photo Tools. I didn't like how it made the changes, but in Perfect Effects, I actually like it a lot. It's very subtle, but when it's applied, it's beautiful. So Fashion Passion is one of those effects I like. I got the blues, another great one that I go for. And then, truthfully, in all honesty, Dave, I've been spending less time using effects and more time building my own with the effect options. You see, with Perfect Effects 3, we gave you these are the tools that we use to build the effects that you see down here. There's not a single effect in Perfect Effects that you couldn't recreate with this toolbox. So I like just going in like I did earlier with that tone enhancer, and I customized the brightness, I customized the local contrast, and I also customized the tone curve. So Jake's asking if there's a Lord of the Rings effect. There is. Actually, under Movie Looks, it's right over here. It's Lord of the Rings. And then Janice, where's the digital fill-in effect? So I assume you're talking about just kind of like almost like a brighten brush. Is that the brighten? Okay, so this is how I brighten. It's actually, I kind of did it already, but let's do it again. What I'll do is I'll go to the tone enhancer, and then I'll bring the brightness up pretty high, something like that. I'll also bring out this shadows slider. This is a shadows recovery slider, so this actually opens up the shadows. See, look at the dark parts of the scene. We're actually bringing out detail there. So when I get it to the, also kind of I'll drop down the local contrast, because all we're doing is we're brightening. When I get this done, what I would do is I would go to the brush and I would invert it. Now I can go ahead and that's my fill flash. So like over here, if I wanted to fill in a bit. Now let's start over for a second. Let's go here to our original image. And then let's go ahead and actually let's do this. I'm going to cancel out of here and go back in for a second, because I want to show you how you can create your own fill flash brush. Having troubles talking. So again, what I would do if I wanted to create my own fill flash brush, I would close out here because I don't need the effects bar. Again, I'm going to recreate exactly what we did before. Tone enhancer, bring up the brightness, bring up the shadow recovery, and then drop the local contrast. Now, what I would do is I would go to presets, save that as a preset, and I'd call this fill flash brush, or you can call it digital. Create your own folder. You can call this kind of like brushes or brush effects, and hit create. Now, if we delete this and we go to the presets, there's the brush effects folder. And here's what you can do is you just click on that digital fill brush. You go to the masking brush. It's going to say that you need to expand your preset. That's fine. Just hit yes. And with the masking brush selected, I can invert the mask. Oops. And now I've got my brush, so I can kind of paint in where I need to. And you can create a brush out of any single effect. Like I can create a, watch, let's go here. Let's go to color enhancers. And I'm just going to create a saturation brush. A saturation brush, but that also kind of cools off the image. Just like before. Now what I can do is I can take this layer right here, delete it, turn that layer on, save it as a preset, call this saturation brush, saturation boost brush, back to the brush effects, and then hit create. And here's the key. When you create that preset, again, you'll have to expand the preset. Perfect Effects will tell you that. And all you do is you select the brush, you invert, and then you paint in where you want it. So you see how we're bringing out, and like let's say we paint in the sky. So it becomes a brush. How did I get to the Advanced tab, Janice? It's just right up here. There's Basic on the top right, and then next to it's Advanced. By default, if you're a new Perfect Effects user or you've never clicked on Effects, you'll be in the Basic. You'll know you're in Basic because you're missing the Blending Options button, and you're missing the Effect Options panel. So there they are. William's asking, could these brushes be used to process the iceberg image that we saw in Seth Resnick's? Absolutely, if you wanted to. Absolutely. It follows the same principle as Lightroom's adjustment brushes, except we give you more options. You can make a brush out of anything. I can make a black and white brush. So Yeah, it's totally up to you. All right. So that was kind of how I would have processed the image back with that texture. But I'm glad I had the opportunity to show you presets. And, the power of presets. A preset, I think we, by default at onOne, we define a preset as this collection of effects. But another way to define it is a preset's just a snapshot of an effect, even if it's one. And so by snapshotting an effect at a specific strength and at a specific parameters set, you can create a brush out of that by selecting the masking brush and inverting it. So there was a question earlier. David asked about insurance for camera gear. And we've covered this on a webinar in the past. And so we'll go, this is kind of like how I like to do the Q&A session is we do an image, we field some questions, do another image, field some questions. So photography insurance, it really depends. Most of the insurance companies out there, most of you, I'm going to assume, have either renter's insurance if you rent or homeowner's insurance if you own a house. And on these policies, you can easily add a rider, kind of like an extension to your policy that covers specific gear. And so when I had that, I actually used, I provided the insurance company with each piece of equipment, the serial number of the gear, and stuff like that. And that's great in the event that the camera breaks or something is stolen while you're vacationing in Venice. What it doesn't cover is liability. And so a lot of times when I would go shooting on location, like in an abandoned place, or for instance, was about 2 years ago at Photoshop World in Vegas, we had an HDR photo walk at Fremont Street Experience in old Las Vegas. And the city would not even think about issuing me a permit until I had at least $1 million in liability insurance. And so I went ahead and I got in. I still have the insurance policy through this company called CNA. And CNA, I'll put the link in the chat module so you can just click it for yourselves. You can open up a separate policy that will cover your photo gear, it'll cover your camera gear, but it'll also give you a lot more liability insurance. And what liability insurance is used for is to, in the event that you damage something or you're hurt on the scene or you hurt somebody with your tripod, the city's covered in case that person decides to, be litigious and sue. So Annabelle asks a good question. How do you import filters from Perfect Photo Suite 5 to Perfect Photo Suite 6? The answer is actually very easy. Unfortunately, you can't. And the reason why you can't, Annabelle, is because for instance, Photo Tools 2.6 used one type of technology that relied on Photoshop. When we built Perfect Effects 3, which is part of the current suite, we rebuilt everything from the ground up, and so they're not transferable. We did our best to recreate as many effects as possible. So Janice is asking, is there any way that you could save the effects in a favorite folder? That functionality is coming, Janice. We used to have the ability to kind of set your favorites, and I can tell you that it's coming. So you'll be able to kind of star your favorite effects and have a separate filter just for those. For now, unfortunately, you can't. Glenn, I'm not sure I understand the question. When you create a preset, does it create the effect in the same location? Or do you need to define the location where you set the preset? Oh, that's a great question. I see what you're saying. So let's say, let's take another image. Let's take Jan's image here into Photoshop. And so I think what you're saying is, let's go to Perfect Effects. And so what I think Glenn is saying is, let's say we're in perfect effects here, and I apply, for instance, deep blacks, a black and white effect. And then I want to go ahead and to go to my presets. Let's hit add to commit the effect. I want to go to my presets, and let's add a preset here like Cold City Morning. So if I remember correctly, if you just click on Cold City Morning, it'll apply to the the current position, so it doesn't overwrite anything. However, if I delete this and I'm on the deep blacks over here and I don't hit add, I just go and I select the preset, it'll overwrite the deep blacks layer. So what you'll want to make sure of is we'll go to the black and whites, we'll go to deep blacks. You'll want to make sure that you hit add to create a new layer, and then if we go to the presets, you can add it. Now, if you want to continue on and say you want to start brushing using one of your brush presets, when you hit add, make sure you just hit add, because now we can go to the brush effects and we can go to the digital flash. Again, when it applies, it'll apply to that. This is key here. What we want to do is we want to expand this. So when we go to the masking brush, we'll get the message saying that you have to expand it. You'll hit yes. You'll go to that tone enhancer, and you'll go to the inspector. Where did it go? There it is. And then you'll invert it, and then we can kind of paint in where we want. Can both versions run alongside each other so you can use old presets and new old presets? No, Candace. Hey, good to see you, Candace. I'm sorry. Can both versions run alongside each other? Yes, absolutely. So what Candace is asking, well, all right, we can't bring Photo Tools presets into Perfect Effects. Can we still run Photo Tools with Perfect Effects? Absolutely, yes. They're compatible. You can't open one in the other, but you can. I could have taken this image into Photo Tools. I don't have Photo Tools installed in this computer, but I know for a fact that it'll work. Photo Tools requires Photoshop, and so I could have taken this image into Photo Tools, applied a legacy preset, it would come back in on its own layer in Photoshop, and then I could have gone into Perfect Effects. Yes. David's asking for what my 5D Mark III wish list is. Well, I'd be my prediction is that the camera, the successor to the Canon 5D, will be announced within 2 weeks. Canon has to answer Nikon's recent announcements with the D800 and the D4. I've read rumors that there might be 2 different camera lines. There might be the 5D Mark III and then the 5DX. One will be more for the photographer, and one will be more for the videographer. I don't know the validity of that, but I'm chomping at the bit. I have the new 2470 pre-ordered as well. I've been waiting for that for a long time. William's asking, how do you control the double circle for the brush? So the double circle is this. Let's go back into Perfect Effects. So if we apply an effect, let's just add the chrome one. So if we go to our masking brush here, you can see 2 circles. The inner circle is the hard edge of the brush. And then the outer circle is the soft edge. The distance in between the two is a transition area, and we call that a feather. So the way that you control that is bring up the inspector, and then you can see here that if I drop the feather, we're decreasing that transition area, so that if we have a 0 feather, the entire brush is a hard edge. However, if I bring that feather up, I have kind of a wiggle room to play with. There's a transition, so you can kind of see that. So there's a soft edge, and then if we, there's a hard edge. So you kind of see the difference between the two. That's a hard edge. That you have wiggle room until it transitions to nothing. And you'll find the concept of feathering is not unique to the suite. Feathering, you'll see feathering controls for pretty much anywhere that you see some sort of a masking control. You'll see it in Photoshop. You'll see it in Focal Point. You'll see it in Lightroom. So it's good to know. How do you set up feathering for Wacom? All right. Well, what I would do is if I wanted to set up, for instance, feathering. So the first thing you need to do before you understand feathering is you need to know what the shortcut keys are. So if we're in, let's go back into Perfect Photo Suite for a second. So we need to know what the controls are for feathering and for brush size. And we could find those out if you go to the Help menu item. There is a Show Keyboard Shortcuts item. And that brings up all the keyboard shortcuts for perfect effects. So the first one we're looking for is brush size. And we see that to make the brush smaller is a left bracket. And to make it larger is a right bracket. And then there's the brush feather. To adjust the feather to make it harder, shift left bracket, and then to make it softer, shift right bracket. So we have these two keyboard shortcuts. Now what I would do is I'd go to the system preferences, and this is it's similar on Windows, except you'd probably go to your I don't know if the Wacom preferences are in the control panel or not, but on the Mac it's system preferences, Wacom tablet. Now I'd select my Intuos 4 medium. I'd go to the functions. And then I'd have to select an app. So let's pretend I didn't have Perfect Photo Suite here. What I'd do is I'd hit the plus sign, and I'd scroll down Perfect Photo Suite 6. The nice thing about this is it'll show any currently open apps. So Suite is already launched, but if I didn't have it launched, I can browse for it. I'll hit OK. And now what I'll do is I want to control I want the touch ring here to control my brush size and my brush feather. So I'm going to go to the touch ring. And there are 4 options, 4 different settings. The first one's going to be my brush size. So I'm going to go down to keystroke. And you see 2 controls. One for moving your finger to the left and one to the right. So for the left, I want the brush to get smaller, so I'm going to hit the left bracket key. And for the right, I'll do the right bracket key. And I'll call this brush size. I'll hit OK. Now I'm going to go to the second menu item, and I'm going to go to keystroke. I'm going to clear both of these. For the left, I want the feather to get smaller, so I'm going to hit shift left bracket. And for the right, I want it to get, wait, how do I want this? I want to get smaller, so shift, yep, and then this will be shift right bracket, and we'll call this feather. And we'll hit OK. Now the other 2 here I don't really need anything for right now, so I'm going to hit skip on both of these. Now, if I press the middle button on my Wacom, you can see over here there's brush size and feather. So with brush size selected, if I take my masking brush, oh, I actually have to apply an effect, sorry. You can see first the brush size. Left makes it smaller, right makes it larger. So I'm just kind of using the touch ring. And then if I press the middle button to feather, you can see how I'm adjusting the feather. So I can do this really nice and quickly. I swear by my Wacom tablet. So you can see I can kind of mask that out. Do the keyboard shortcuts mimic Photoshop? Yeah, Mike, as best as we could. The shortcuts are similar. So the left and right brackets for the brush size are the same in Photoshop. Is there a command to toggle between the mask blend modes? Well, let's see. Let's see, Tom. I know that Command M will turn the mask on and off. Command or Control M, but let's see if there are. So there's you can see here, show hide mask. So it doesn't look like there is one. to go like from overlay to white to black to grayscale. So what you would have to do there is you can turn the mask on, bring up the inspector, and select. Well, let me see if that maintains it. Yeah. So whatever the last mask selected was, that will toggle Command M on and off. Why am I so excited for the 2470? The reason why I'm so excited about it, David, is because, one, it's lighter. I have the original 2470, and it's just really heavy. And from what I read, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that it zooms internally. So that right now, when you on the 2470, when you when you go wide to 24, there's a barrel that extends out. It telescopes out, and it's really frustrating. So I'm hoping that you know. So let's actually work on this image, because we've just been kind of using it as examples. But so for this shot here, I'm going to zoom out just a bit. There we go, to make it a little bit sharper. The interpolation of the image, you can see it makes it look like it's losing quality, but it's actually not. So we've got this image here. The first thing that I would do here is I would definitely bring out texture in the bird. And so the way I'm going to do that is to create a texture brush. Go to Effects, go to Tone Enhancer, and I'm going to bring up the local contrast a bunch, bring up the clarity a little bit, and bring up the contrast a tiny bit. Now, with that done, I'm going to take my masking brush and invert it. Now, with it painted in, I'm just going to paint it in on the bird. And so right now I'm just adding texture, nothing else. And by adding texture, I'm also hoping to have the bird stand out a little bit more off the background. So kind of on the little tiny legs. If I had more time, I would definitely mask that branch out. It looks like it'd be easy enough to do. Next thing I would do is let's hit Add, and then let's start playing around with different effects here. A lot of times, you know how I mentioned I'll build my own effects? A lot of times before I do that, I'll just scan pre-built effects to give me an idea, like, again, Fashion Passion. Let's see if I select that, and I drop that strength down a bit, and then go to the blending options. I'm going to see if maybe adding multiply or soft light. Ooh, that looks pretty cool. I like what the effect is doing to the entire image. I might try to mask it out at a small amount, so I'm going to take my masking brush and paint it out at about 50% off the bird, because I want the bird to be the brighter part of the scene here. Oh, I'm in paint in. Sorry, I want to be in paint out. Okay. And then I'm trying to think. Let's hit Add. We could try this. This could be interesting. Let's go to Textures and we'll go to Dark Clouds. So the clouds come in vertically. First thing we're going to do with that is I want to make the clouds horizontal. And then I'm going to use a masking bug. So we've got this bug here. And if I click on the image, I'm going to mask it out on the horizon. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop that strength of the clouds. I don't want them to be that hard. I just want a faint recognition of blue. So you see kind of how it does a really nice job of you can even probably bring it down a little bit more. But I do like what we did with that. And so again, we can the before and the after. That's the before. That's the after. The last thing I might do is add a slight glow to the image. Again, I really like Deep Forest. Drop it down to 0. Bring it up a little bit. Play around with the blending options. Sometimes one of the blending options does a nice job, like multiply. In this case here, hard light's really nice. And then let's hit apply. So let's do that. We'll bring it back to Photoshop. Now there are a few things I would do in Photoshop. Actually, I should have done this in Photoshop before I went to Perfect Effects. But what I would do is right off the bat, this is driving me nuts. So I'm going to get rid of that using content aware, and it kind of fills in nicely the clouds. I'll take a shot at this over here. It might work, it might not, but I try to avoid having any kind of distractions like that through the edge of the frame. Actually does a really nice job. So you can see what we had there, and then what we were able to remove in just a few clicks. Now, the last thing I would do is I would probably go to focal point. So I'll go to File, Automate, Focal Point. Let's reset everything here. And so we've got the bird. I'm going to change the, let's zoom out a bit. There we go. I'm going to change the mode from round to planar. And let's make it, actually let's do this before we do, let's not even go into focal point yet. Let's go back into Photoshop and use a quick selection brush. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the bird. Now a quick selection brush is really nice because, wait a second, why is it in paint out mode? Let me deselect this. Something's up with my, I feel like I have a button stuck on my Wacom. There we go. All right, select the brush again. And so I'm just going to select the beak. Try to get the legs as best as possible. I'm okay with this. This is a good enough selection for me. Let me get the little hairs sticking out. All right, here's the key. With focal point through Photoshop, the nice thing about the focal point through Photoshop is that it'll recognize selections. If I were to send this image to focal point right now, it would only blur the bird because the bird's selected. And what I want is I want the bird to always be in focus. And so what I can do is go to select and inverse. So now everything but the bird is selected, and I can go to focal point. Now what I can do is I can take that planar bug, put it on the foreground here just a little bit, and then start painting in focus along the edges to kind of clean it up. So I can take my focus brush, I can take it at a low opacity and a small brush size and just kind of start painting focus along the edge here. And what that'll do is it'll help reduce that harsh transition. See how we're reducing that transition here? Might also, where is it? Oh, here we go. Darken the background, increase the contrast of the background, maybe add a slight vignette. Hit apply. Now again, the border here can be fixed a lot, and it's just a matter of using the brushes in focal point to do it. I don't want to spend that much time, but you kind of see where I'm going at. So if we kind of start at the beginning, here was our original image, and then we stylized it in Perfect Effects. You see we added a little bit more of a body to the sky. We've used Photoshop to remove the brush, and then focal point kind of really lets the bird pop off the screen. Yeah, I'm painting in. Mike asks a good question. We're kind of shifting back to gear. And Mike's, with regards to this new 2470, he's asking if the lack of image stabilization bother you. It doesn't, and I'll tell you why. I think a lot of people are just kind of reacting and not really looking at the big picture. So I use the 5D Mark II. I shoot with the Canon 5D Mark II, and I shoot with the 2470, which as it is already heavy. The 5D Mark II has such amazing low light, high ISO capabilities that I never even thought that I'd need IS on the camera, or on the lens rather. That focal length is is not really one where, especially at 2.8, which is a wide open, fast aperture. IS never really concerned me. Worst case, if it's a lower light, yeah, I would bump the ISO to 800, 1600, 3200. All those ISOs are perfectly usable with the 5D2. It's a beautiful camera. Adding IS, it's nice, but it would add weight to the lens, and that lens right there has been heavy enough as it was. Now, I'm not thrilled that it's got an 82 millimeter thread on the front of the lens, whereas the current one has a 77 millimeter. That means that I need to go buy a new adapter ring for my Lee filter system, but the adapter ring is like $27. The lens itself is $2,400, so it's kind of like you're already there. Do I think that Canon will improve the 7D? Oh, absolutely, Janice. The 7D is a wildly popular camera for Canon. But I think right now Canon has been neglecting the 5D line for a long time. The 5D Mark I, the original 5D, it was 5 years from when the 5D to the 5D2 came out. The 5D2 came out in 2008. I remember I got the day it was released, I got it. And what are we in 2012? So it's 4 years. No, it came out I think October, November 2008. And so we're in 2012, early on 2012. So 3.5 years. 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11. Yeah, good. My math is okay. Mike's saying to wait for the 1DX. Actually, Mike, I went 2 or 3 nights ago. I was invited to a private Canon event at one of the local pubs here in Portland, and our Pacific Northwest Canon rep brought a 1DX, and so there were about 10 of us, 10 of the photographers there, and it was just to, hey, what do you think? Here's the camera. Tell us what you think. And so I was playing around with it, and I got to say, I fell in love with it. It's a beautiful camera. I mean, it is just fantastic. It brackets up to 7 brackets. I found that out, which is nice. I'd prefer 9, but you can spread it out by, I think, 3 stops. So it's pretty cool. The only problem is it's almost $7,000. I'm expecting the 5D to be around $3,300 as my guess.